Directors meeting for Everett Public Schools. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
President Mason.
Present.
Vice President Andrews. Director Lassane.
Present.
Director Mitchell.
Present.
Director Wenta. Student Representative Parikh. Student Representative Pollock.
Thank you. Our first order of business tonight is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Cohn, may you please introduce tonight's agenda?
Certainly. Consistent with the plans established at your 2017 Summer Planning Workshop, tonight's agenda includes several elements related to both the district's strategic plan and the board's annual goals. There is a segment this evening for routine business, a segment for recognition, a segment for board comments, a segment for the superintendent's report, a segment for strategic progress reporting, one for information items, one for unfinished business, and a segment for new business. There's also a segment for upcoming agenda items. Following the publication of the agenda to the board, following changes have been made. Item 4.1, adoption of the agenda, was revised to include a corrected timing sheet. Item 8.1, the superintendent's report will be updated during the meeting as is customary for regular meetings. Item 12.1, approval of Resolution 1163, replacement of educational programs and operations levy for 2018, was replaced. The resolution itself was replaced to fix some minor typographical and formatting adjustments. And with the attachments, item 12.2, approval of Resolution 1164, unlimited tax general obligation bonds, was also amended to, again, adjust some minor typographical and formatting changes to the attachments, and we changed the descriptions of the bond projects to more accurately describe the intended scope of the work. We consider those adjustments improvements. Item 13.1, approval of Resolution 1165, was actually added after I published the agenda to you in order to comply with RCW 4217A551, paragraph 1, based on the board president's request to have the board take a position on both proposals prior to the next meeting. The board may elect to change the order of business by a majority vote of the members. This is not the point in your agenda where you request items to be removed from the consent agenda. In all other respects, the agenda is as it was originally presented to you, and we ask your approval thereof.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Lassane and seconded by Director Mitchell to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we will move to the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The motion carries. The agenda is adopted. Which brings us to section 5.0, recognitions. And tonight we have a special guest in our audience, and I believe Becky Clifford is going to come up and introduce us to Robin Arnold, a district school psychologist who has been awarded the Washington State School Psychologist of the Year.
And I'm also going to ask Cindy and Zach to join us. So Robin, Cindy, and Zach, please join us. Thank you, Superintendent and Board. I would just like to start by saying over 2.5 years ago, in March of 2015, my second week in the district, I spent the morning with all the school psychologists. I walked away thinking this is a very talented group of individuals and with a promise of what was to come. If you had told me then that just 2.5 years later we would be celebrating the Washington State School for Psychologists of the Year, I would have said, sure, maybe in 5 years. But this is a true testament to Robin Arnold's professional practice, leadership, commitment to students, staff, and families, as well as her colleagues and the overall success of the district. As a school psychologist, Robin has primarily worked at Lowell Elementary supporting students, staff, and families from preschool through 5th grade. She has demonstrated exceptional skills in all facets of a school psychologist, from knowledge of the law to writing thorough evaluations, collaborating with and training staff members to support students. And she also has developed interventions, and she supported social skills by teaching students in the area of social skills. Robin is also one of our team leads, and she's been overseeing and supporting the school psychologist for the last 2 years. Through this work, she has led this group with an equity focus, supporting students with diverse needs and many students with very complex needs. Additionally, she has one of her roles is advocating for testing protocols that support a range of student learners, and specifically those that speak different languages. She always includes a coupon or another form of cost savings to ensure that the requests are fiscally responsible. That's true. Robin has made such a tremendous impact on so many people, and we in the department deeply appreciate all that she does and celebrate her for this well-deserved honor. I'm gonna...
Hi, I'm Zach Crane, one of the directors of special services who also supervises school psychs, and I've worked as a school psych in the district. I just wanted to take a moment to let you know how privileged I've been to work with Robin for the last 4 years, both as a school psychologist and as a facilitator, now as a director. Through that time, we've had the opportunity to both support our individual school psychologist partners, but also to really focus in on addressing some of the systemic needs of our students with disabilities in our schools with disabilities, particularly ensuring that we address issues of disproportionality in our students with disabilities across our district. And I've just really appreciated that work and where it's gotten us to this day. Thank you.
And I'm Cindy Foster, the Lowell principal, and I just really appreciate Robin. I think she's well deserving of this award. When I heard it, I thought, yes, finally somebody's recognized at a really high level how superb of a psychologist she is. She's fantastic, and I just want to say on behalf of the Lowell staff who's here, if they could stand up, and let's give Robin a big hand. We love Robin, and we just love her to death, and we're just so happy that she's being recognized today.
Robin, if your family wants to join you, I asked your husband what kind of flowers she liked, and he said, well, you can get her flowers, but Starbucks cards would last longer. So Zach made you a bouquet of Starbucks cards.
Starbucks cards.
And I think we're going to bring you up for a photo with the board, if that's okay, if you want to come this way, and then other people can use their cameras if they'd like. Come.
Yep, okay. Okay, Starbucks card.
For our district. He's in charge of robotics at Gateway. So, outstanding people.
Okay, so you taught him much, because one day I was at school and there was a boy not behaving, and he got him calmed down.
Yeah, thank you. We have many conversations about what
So, on behalf of the Board of Directors, for being named 2017 School Psychologist of the Year by Washington State Association of School Psychologists, and for representing Everett Public Schools with excellence, we thank you. Okay, we're going to take a couple steps this way. Come towards me.
Back there.
Ready? Over here. Good. Got it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I love that. Hey, a Starbucks card. Congratulations. There's some real flowers.
Wilson helped out last night with the Native American Family Conversation.
You did?
He's been at both of them, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's,
Cool. That's so cool.
Go there every year. Okay, moving on. Section 6.0, public comments. The board recognizes the value of public comments on educational issues and the importance of involving members of the public in our meetings. Dr. Cohen, are there any requests for comments this evening?
there are none.
Okay. With that, we move to the consent agenda. Would you please introduce tonight's consent agenda?
Yes, the board's consent agenda contains repetitive business items. These include, for example, meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, and recurring contracts. Sometimes the consent agenda will include items that occur less frequently, but are of a routine business nature. The less frequently occurring consent agenda items are usually reviewed by the board in its Friday report, one or more weeks before the board meeting when those items are scheduled to appear on the consent agenda. This gives directors time to ask staff questions about the items or to consider a discussion about the policy implications of those items. If a consent agenda item is removed by the concurrence of two directors, that item is placed in new business, and then the system automatically renumbers the remaining items. The board votes on the consent agenda in a single motion. By definition, a consent agenda is not debatable. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office has not received any questions or comments regarding any of the items. Therefore, the consent agenda is presented as published for your approval, which we ask of you.
Thank you. A motion to adopt the consent agenda is in order.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
It has been moved by Director Mitchell and seconded by Director Lassane to approve the consent agenda. Does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in new business of the agenda? Hearing none, we will move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Which brings us this evening to board comments. How about if we start to the left with Student Representative Parikh?
All right, so this last Friday, I had the opportunity to accompany the board to the WASDA annual conference in Bellevue. And so I was just there for the day, but I had the opportunity to attend 3 breakout sessions. The first one on creating a compassionate community in our schools, the second one on hot topics in education, and the third on student voice and how the board can incorporate that into their proceedings. And so specifically, I'll be reporting on what I learned from the student voice session. And so that was led by the Riverview School District, their board and their student representatives. And they discussed the different strategies that they employ to bring student voice into board meetings and just the general proceedings of the board as a whole. And so a lot of what they did, we're already doing here at Everett, like having student representatives on the board in the first place, bringing them with us to the legislative conference in Olympia every year, and also meeting with the ASB officers and having the ASB officers from each high school present to the board. But some other things that they did that were interesting to me were that every month the principal of their middle school and high school, so they only have one of each in their district, select 16 students that form a representative sample of the schools. And those 16 students come and meet with the board, which allows the board to get a more comprehensive overview of the different needs that the students have on top of just the 2 student representatives that they have on the board. Now that's more difficult considering we have a lot more schools than just 2. But I thought that was an interesting thing that they did. Another thing is that at the beginning of every board meeting, they have student presentations, kind of similar to how we occasionally have music groups perform in front of the board before meetings. But these student presentations range from art groups or just clubs on campus, or even some classes from the schools that present what they've been doing, and basically what they've been doing to the board. And so those are some things that I thought were interesting, and that other student representatives in the audience also bounced around ideas, and it was a very valuable session for me.
Great, thank you very much for sharing that. Director Lesane?
Yes, I had the opportunity to attend 3 board breakfast conversations at Jackson, at Emerson, and at Monroe. And I can tell you that we've had several parents, lots of parents attend each one of those meetings. I think I would say on average about 8, if you average all 3, 8 to 10 parents attend the meetings. It's just amazing, and I really think we're learning so much about the conversations that we're having with our parents. One, to share the good news of the district, to share the challenges of the district, so that they can understand those concerns that we have. Plus, it opens up some new ideas in which they can partner with their home school and the things that are going on their campuses there that they may not understand. And I think this is a good way for parents to share that information and be able to talk with the principal and learn what's going on, what's good, what the challenges are, and also with the district. That brings me to the WASDA conference. I had the opportunity to attend as well. And one of the keynote luncheon conversations that we had was open up to the community and engage parents and the community in the work of the school district, and how we can bring the 2 voices together so that they understand what's happening at the district and in their home schools, and we understand their needs. And I think it speaks volumes to the things that we try to do here. And I would hope that we continue to keep this up, because you find out so much. He was uplifting and inspirational. And I think when you find out so much as to what's going on in your community, you have greater opportunities to partner and share and learn from the communities and develop more successful students. So I think that's really great. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Immediately following our last board meeting, the following morning, I had the opportunity to attend the Madison Elementary breakfast, and I was just so impressed with the culture change there at that school. They've had a rough go of a lot of principals, several principals over the last year, and it was really, really heartwarming to see the parents and the principal and the teachers starting to come together for in a way that everyone is supportive of our students. Really nice. They were really excited about the STEM signature programs. And when I mentioned, it's their kids that are going to benefit from these programs. It's unfortunately probably not the kids that are in high school now, maybe some of the freshmen, but really by the time it's all said and done and up and running, it's going to be the middle schoolers and the elementary school kids. So that got them really excited, and I met some really enthusiastic parents that are just ready to help jump in and make whatever we decide successful. Then the same day, I had the opportunity with Dr. Stewart once again to attend the Everett High School PTA meeting. And again, same kind of enthusiasm for the STEM programs. Of course, they have a renovation that is on the proposed bond right now. I believe it's the E building, and then the cafeteria building, which is a big deal for that school. Also had an opportunity to speak with the editorial board, the Herald editorial board, and I just have to say, after Dr. Cohn ran through his little presentation, and he showed how the state or how the district was outperforming the state on the SBA and the number of double digits that went up. You know his slide with all the little check marks that come up. His comment was, wow. Which I think was what you were looking for. And he was truly impressed. It was very fun to see because he's sort of a business as usual guy. And when he goes, wow, you're like, oh, good, we got him this time. And then also attended the WASDA conference last Friday and Saturday, attended a session on family involvement, which I thought was very interesting. Our neighbors to the south in North Shore are doing a fairly good job with that, and there's some learning to be had there. And then also Chris Rakedahl and Tim Garshaw. How do you pronounce his last name? Garshaw did just a sort of answer questions about the state of the legislature, where they think it's going, some new things, and it's just changing so much that I thought I wouldn't learn that much, and actually I learned a whole lot. And just the conference in general, the longer I'm a director, the deeper the learning gets each time, because you really can engage with the sessions and really understand what they mean when they use all those acronyms. And then Evergreen Middle School breakfast just this morning. That is, I have to say, just a favorite of mine. They, again, were really excited about the signature STEM programs, and a lot of conversation around feeding kids throughout the day, that a lot of their students don't have access to food the way that some of our other students do, and talking about programs that can be put in place to help them, especially the kids that stay after for academic support or clubs or sports. And just a great appreciation, the fact that the district wants to hear their concerns, which just gets me all excited. And then went immediately from there over to Everett High School to help deliver food for their annual food drive, and got to take holiday meals to, I think, 6 families, and was joined by my son today because he's home, and I made him get out of bed earlier than he would have liked to, but he was happy to return and give a little back. So a good busy day, actually a good busy few weeks.
I just have a list of thank yous during this very thankful time, and I'll try to be brief. I went to the Gateway Parent Breakfast. Dr. Scott and I were there, and thankfully he took notes. I didn't write it down, so I'm having trouble thinking of what I want to say. I appreciate what you said about Evergreen, because Gateway has a 10% free and reduced lunch, or maybe a little bit less than that. But the conversation had to do, even at that school where less than 1 in 10 students is in poverty, about how do we feed the kids that don't have. So the fact that throughout our community there is this sense of how do we help those that don't have enough, it was apparent there. Also, some confusion by the parents as they're giving us feedback about the discussion about the STEM programs and the possible portables if a bond, depending on our bond for the new high school. A question came up of why don't we just send our kids to that new high school off of 180th North Creek? And I said, because that's not our school district, that's North Shore. So I think that there are, for those South End people, some confusion about this brand new high school that they can look at, but they can't attend. So I think just as an opportunity for some education. Just the other day, the Seattle Times endorsed, I think for the second time, a simple majority for public schools. And this is something that, when listening to the legislators at WASDA, probably is just a pie in the sky kind of dream, but the fact that it's part of the constant conversation and the community dialogue, I think is wonderful. Having spent a weekend with these outstanding board members, I am so thankful to serve with you. And Druvik, just the fact that what you were able to learn at that program and all the students that were there, just outstanding. And I am thankful for this world-class staff, that meeting and hearing stories, that you are bar none the absolute best staff that's out there. And I know there's only like 12 of you in this room, but that goes for the thousands of people that work for this district. Sally and I had an opportunity to spend a day in an immersion simulation for poverty. And I came away with some definite learnings. She did too. But the thing for me, without any kind of, it was just you're given a role and you're asked to be this role. So I was a 9-year-old girl with a brother who was 2 years younger, which is really my situation when I grew up with my sister. And I had grandparents in this role, but I had a mom and then grandparents that helped me. And just what it did is it just made me very, very thankful for my mom, who protected us from all the poverty we had as kids, that she didn't let that stress come home. And the fact that the kids in this program are going to school every day, and the teacher saying, bring $2 for this field trip, bring $4 for these art supplies. I mean, that happens in our schools. Bring this money, bring this money. And when my grandparents in the simulation are living paycheck to paycheck and trying to find money for food, and when we looked at our budget, we're $26 over budget every month. We went through the simulation fine, but obviously like too many of our families on the brink. And so it really made me think about districts that I heard about that have gone no fees, no charges for things. All field trips are 100% paid for. What are the opportunities so that every child in our district can have that safety and that protection when they go to school and when they go home, that more isn't being asked of their families. So I could go on, but I'm just very thankful. So thank you.
Thank you. I heard also at the Evergreen parent talk this morning about fees, that often even $10 is a barrier for students to participate in field trips and such. So definitely a goal that we would like to work towards, I think. And I appreciate your thankful message during this time of year. With that, it's now time for our superintendent to tell us what's up.
All righty. Well, I think I've got a fairly short one this evening. I think it goes along with a short week. We got a little bit of good news, some district news, and a construction update. And I wanted you to have a nice quick pick of kids working on a variety of technology in a classroom. And I think this one was Everett High, as I recall. But anyway, just remind you the kind of work that's going on at the schools where the one-to-one platform has started. We'd like to recognize Jackson High School's Chloe Lamargo. She capped her prep career by claiming the Class 4A state title in the 100 breaststroke on Saturday. She posted an All-American consideration time of 1:03.51 seconds during the state swim and dive championships at King County Aquatic Center, and we just like to say congratulations to Chloe as she concludes that career. We also want to congratulate Harshu Musamuri. She's a finalist for a very large scholarship. We received an email from the Siemens Corporation. Only 101 of the 4,092 applicants made it to the finals for this competition. It's administered by Discovery Ed. And the competition recognizes and builds a strong pipeline for the nation's most promising scientists, engineers, and mathematicians. And I think everyone in this room, having heard Harshu speak, can vouch for that level of quality in that young woman. Winners of the regional events will advance to the national finals to be held at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C., December 4 and 5, where $500,000 in scholarships will be awarded to, this includes the top two prizes of $100,000 and one of the most prestigious science honors awarded to high school students in the country today. So I don't know who's won the prize of being her chaperone back there, but I'm sure they're going to have a really, really good time. Wanted to show you a quick picture of our Everett High School Navy Junior ROTC students. We actually tried to collect a few pictures from Veterans Day assemblies, and frankly, we just didn't have any luck collecting pictures. So we got this one. Students are visiting Brookdale and Everett to present certificates of appreciation to residents of the care facility who served in the United States military. And I could guarantee you that the folks absolutely love to see the students coming in and being able to spend a little bit of time with them. Evergreen Middle School got involved in a partnership with a sorority from the University of Washington. Nobody will tell me which one. I think they're having trouble with the Greek letters, actually. They collected 2,500 food items for their food drive in service to the entire Everett community. The Evergreen Middle School students gave these donations to their, I don't know, no pun intended, right? Feeder school, Everett High, and in support of the Everett High food drive. At Everett High, the food drive served 141 families. Students and staff collected $6,052 and change and 500 boxes of food. Safeway also generously supported Everett High efforts with a $15,000 grant, which we're very proud of and pleased with. So thank you very much to the Safeway folks and all the kids at Everett and Evergreen who made that such a successful food drive for the families who need that support at Thanksgiving. Learning walks are in full swing. They're now a fall tradition for our instructional leadership team. The walks began last week, and they'll be completed by the end of the month. Garfield and View Ridge Elementary's North Middle and Everett High School are featured in those learning walks this year. The November learning walks also provide the instructional team members an opportunity to observe students engaged in balanced math learning experiences and in settings where they're using technology to access authentic learning experiences. Thought you'd enjoy these pictures of that, I believe, debriefing in this particular case. The robotics competitions begin at noon on Saturday, December 2nd. They take place at Glacier Peak High School, Ballard High School, and Mount Vernon High School. Finals are the following weekend, and Everett Public Schools will have teams competing from each elementary and middle school, as well as 2 teams representing Port Gardner. And I have to tell you, when we were out talking about schools in the community, we show them the graph that demonstrates the growth of these clubs in our schools. People's eyes definitely widen a bit. So I want to congratulate all the folks who support these youngsters in that effort. EPS Cafe is the hashtag our food and nutrition department has been using since the beginning of the school year to share delicious posts on social media, and we wanted to make sure that you had a quick pic of the kind of thing that they're doing, and we encourage you to check out that hashtag because Food Nutrition wants you to know, especially with their new Facebook page, that healthy food equals happy faces. Turkey and gravy are sort of in the news this week. This is the crew at Sequoia this past week. This is the 4th year the food nutrition staff partnered with Sequoia to put on a Thanksgiving feast for students and staff. 119 people were fed this year, thanks to a very generous donor. All the meals are paid for, so all the students can eat regardless of their ability to pay. Principal Shelley Kepper typically invites the community to participate in the feast, adding to that festive atmosphere. So we wanted you to have a quick picture of the staff who've been doing so much work to make this turkey gravy lunch an annual hit. District staff are going to be digging into the educational program planning for Woodside Elementary right after Thanksgiving break. Kelly Smith of Dykeman Architects is going to lead a 6-meeting process to ensure that our school design matches the needs of the educational activities taking place at the school. Kelly's done the work many times for us in this district, in North Shore and in Bellingham. The ed spec work includes visiting other schools in our district, a school in Issaquah and a school in Edmonds. The group is going to finish its work in late January of this coming year. Finally, sometimes the things we don't see are as important as the things that we do. For example, school cooling towers and HVAC controls and rooftop temperature controls and even roofing materials are things we don't often see, but they're pretty important to the quality of the learning environment in our schools. Those interesting bits require some time and some expertise to design and to install, while not necessarily obvious to the casual observer or the passerby. That design work is happening now in preparation for installation in summer 2018. Also in design and planning is a new floor covering set for Mill Creek Elementary and the synthetic turf replacement at Everett High School's Lincoln Field. And that concludes the formal part of my presentation. I would like to say that I want to thank all of the board members for attending the State School Directors Conference. I think we were engaged in a number of presentations, and I very much appreciate all of you being involved in that effort. I want to thank Dr. Stewart, and I want to thank Director Mason in particular for all the work that they did with the State of School Review presentation. We had some folks approach us after that was over. And by the way, I think with the exception of 2 people, everybody stayed the entire time and walk up and say they have never been to a session better than the one that you all presented. So I want you to know that you did a little bit more to put a little brighter shine on Everett's name and to teach some folks some things that they're definitely looking forward to taking back to their district. So that was, from my perspective, really a wonderful conference. I want to thank you all for all that you've done to make it possible for us to be the quality organization that we are and for kids to have what they have in this district. We are all thankful for you, as I am for the cabinet, the staff of the district, and all those who've made it possible for us to be here this day. That's my report. Thank you.
And thank you. We would be remiss if we didn't mention the fearless leader at top of it all. So thank you as well. That brings us to section 10.0, Strategic Progress Monitoring. And tonight we have a 24 credit plan progress update. And I believe we have Dr. Scott and Willard on board to help us out here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having us.
That's not the same thing as Willard Scott, by the way.
I know. I did that. I kept thinking of that today. I was like, that sounds so familiar.
Reserve judgment now. Yeah. We'll see how this goes. It's off to a great start. Well, Jeannie and I really do appreciate this opportunity to review the 24 credit plan update with you. We're going to provide an overview of our progress to date relative to our 24 credit plan. We're also going to unpack the impact of the second semester pilots that you were familiar with from last academic year, developed by those 24 credit task force folks. We're going to provide a status update on the strategies for this year in full swing for our first semester. And then we're going to outline next steps to address increased graduation requirements relative to 24 credits. You're familiar with the KPOs that surround this particular issue, clearly in the teaching and learning area. Certainly, there are legs, so to speak, in the resource and finance area. So the outline, the lineup for tonight, Jeannie's going to go over the background, progress and timeline of the 24 credit task force, high school and beyond plans for the class of 2021, given our waiver a few years back, a sampling of the 24 credit graduation requirement strategies, and pilot and research for addressing requirements moving into the future. So I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Willard.
So formal. Thank you, Peter. So with that, you know the background very well. With 6552, we were directed to implement the 24 credits, and we delayed that with the waiver that we filed 2 years ago, nearly 2 years ago, to delay that requirement to the class of 2021. So we'll get to share a little bit about the class of 2021, our new ninth graders, through this presentation. Then this past school year, as part of the 2017 legislative session, there was a new House Bill 1509 that was presented, just to tell you that just as soon as you work towards certain graduation requirements, things may change. They presented the idea, it didn't move much further than that, that there would be a change in the graduation requirements to 21. Of course, we have not seen that, but we did see changes to our assessment graduation requirements this past summer. So these things will or could change as we move forward. So we're very aware of that. Also, at the beginning of the month, I was able to check the State Board of Education, and they always list who has waivers at this point. And at this point, because the ninth grade class has started, the class of 2021, the latest ones were from the spring. There were a few more additional districts that were added, but pretty much 54% of the students across the state are impacted by the waiver that was put in place, and it will start with the class of 2021. Our progress to date has really been around communications, and you can see that in our high school course catalog, and before that you can see it in many of the flyers that were shared, our counselors shared, and many others shared. You would also see that we have sheltered English learner courses in our schools. You see those especially this year in algebra, algebra, biology, and U.S. history. A few years back, I was able to work with you and with our teachers around redesigning our college and career readiness seminar and really develop that to be focused on the new high school and beyond plan. That has changed also over the last few years, as well as including that personal finance unit that students work through. We implemented Naviance. Now all of our kids, grades 6 through 12, are in lessons, 3 per year, core lessons at middle school, and many more at the high school levels. And when they are in senior year, they spend a lot of time in there, whether it's a lesson or not. We've increased our course equivalencies. I want to say about 4 years ago, we had about 8 of them. Currently, we have close to 40 course equivalencies. So this offers students options for course taking that fulfill 2 requirements in 1 course. We have spent much time working on our summer interventions, opportunities for getting credits during the school year, as well as accelerating. And you've seen that in a recent summer school presentation. We even advance all the work of WANIC and SNOW, so kids can have free accelerated courses during the summer. We work really hard to make sure we're moving ahead on that. We revised the graduation policy. We've had a task force in place, and you'll see that we've been developing pilots, but they're really strategies to address our 9th and 10th grade students. It's focused on the students who are off track and also the social emotional piece of the work as well, especially around relationships. If you were to look at our timeline this year, we started the year by looking at our high school and beyond plans that were submitted last year by 8th graders for our current 9th graders, and reviewed that with schools. During our on-time graduation meetings, what you would see is that 24 credit strategies have been implemented, and we are doing recurring checks with our schools about what that looks like and what it is that's taking place, how many kids are in those groups. Even next week, we really have an in-depth session that's focused on our 24 credit work, where schools will present back the numbers of kids that have been impacted so far, talk about the attendance and so forth. After first semester, we'll be able to look at those closely, where we are, how many credits have been earned, and do any revisions. And then we will continue to revise and spend a lot of time in the spring in our OTG meetings really focused on 24 credit. At the end of the year, we will also see that the class of 2022, it seems so far away, but it's our current 8th graders, will be going into 9th grade and planning for that, and they will submit their high school and beyond plans. So we will be looking at those things as we move forward. The 24 credit graduation requirements you know very well, because I get to share them with you, as well as they're out and about. The focus is on flexibility. Words that we use are personalized pathway requirements. That's where kids have choices about some of the courses that they take. Fine arts move from 1 to 2 credits, but one of those with this class is really a choice class, that personalized pathway requirement. And for world language, they too, if they've chosen a different career path, they could choose courses based on that and opt out of the world language and choose a different course. It also means that they need to record what their choice around their 3rd year of math is and tell their overall career plan as well in their high school and beyond plan. So looking at the high school and beyond plans for our current class of 2021, there were 1,197 high school plans submitted in Naviance, and we're able to pull those all out of Excel, which is wonderful because you can actually look very quickly and know some of the choices that students have made. You can know immediately which students have and haven't submitted plans to date, and there's mobility going on. So we've caught up with many of those kids. And you can know career plans. They write a lot about what they plan to do, what they may not want to do, all sorts of things around that. They also talk about whether they've shared their plans with their counselor, their family, and others, and they're able to self-report where they are at that point. They record their career plans, and they've already indicated in some cases that they are going to select a personalized pathway requirement option. Some of the career plans that are listed there remind me of our STEM signature programs, because you see airplanes, you see medicine, you see some of the things that we're already focused on, but you also see things, and also teaching, you see hip hop artist producer, you see IDK, I don't know. Actually, you see different versions of IDK throughout the document because there are lists of things that students are interested in. And even though they write this, they can certainly change what it is that their plan is. Every year we're going to be able to capture where they were by the end of the year. They can revise it any time in the year. And then it basically gets stored in Naviance, and then a new one comes up and they can put a new career plan in and so forth. So they can look back at their own records about their choices as well. We've been focusing a lot on our strategies that are really going to be incorporated, and they already are, in our on-time graduation work. So 24 credits is really another layer to our on-time graduation work. It's focused on Tier 3, the few. It's preventative. It really is about flexibility and fluidity, both the changing needs of students, but we have changing students. There's different needs at different points as they go through our system. Ninth graders are very different than our seniors in terms of what they may need or who they are at different points. Leveraging what works. A lot of work has been put into place in terms of on-time graduation, the things that make it very flexible and able to work with lots of kids, but still focused on the student by student, are where you will see the 24 credit work also. And it's really built around relationships. We have also simultaneously been looking at structural changes just so that we understand what that impact would be. And so that has been a collaborative process with the larger task force that we had in place, but many of those members are part of our current on-time graduation committee, and we spent a lot of time focused on that. So the strategy focuses on flexibility, student-by-student monitoring and reporting, and really making an early OTG strategy. And those ways that across the state we've seen other districts looking at this work has really fit the same model that we've looked at it. Structural plus supports. So structural being the way that we change the day or have the day, and supports being that extended learning, the after school, the summer school, how the content is delivered, how we do credit recovery, that social emotional piece, even counseling to some extent, shows up in plans across the state. And one of the things that was recently shown to me is that Peter, when he went to WASDA, came back with a beautiful slide about different districts across the state and actually their structure currently. And maybe some of you saw this as well, but the 6-period day is the most common model that we have, and that is ours at the high school, where 60% of the districts across the state have that. A little less than 20% have that 7-period day, which is at the top of that list, and then to a very lesser extent, you would see block scheduling and trimesters. So we really looked at the models you would see anywhere in the state. So our focus has really been on those flexible options, fitting the right buckets, making sure that we're fitting all the various post-secondary goals that students have, and then of course keeping to the high standards that we want for all students. We implemented last year 5 pilots, and they've been growing in terms of just being our core strategies around on-time graduation. We also spent time focused on school scheduling. When it came to our second semester pilots last year, what you would have seen is that we had 3 schools focused on credit recovery models. Cascade High School had a 7-period day, 51 students with a range of different courses that they met credit recovery credits in. Everett High School, a similar style. They call it SOAR instead of School Success Seminar. Wow, that's a lot of words in my mouth. 40 students in a whole range of content areas earned back credits. Many of them earned many different credits while they were in that course. Jackson took on a problem-based or project-based learning model. 25 students earned credits in algebra, coordinated science, and English, and that was across the entire group, so each of them earned 1.5 credits. Sequoia and our middle schools were focused on the social emotional piece. We spent time with Mike Reddick last year. He focused on working with our middle schools around their master schedule, worked with Cabinet about the scope of what this work would entail if we were to change the structure of our schools, and then with our 24 credit task force group, really went in depth on the wide range of models. Boy, we learned a lot. And the cost comparisons and the impacts to the school schedules, but in terms of the school outcomes, student outcomes, what the change process really looked like. One of the things he shared with us is what it would look like in terms of the cost factors involved. And the blue shows you where we are, the 6-period day being at a threshold of 83%. And if you move to more of a block scheduling 4x4 schedule, it would be a very expensive model. And of course, if you were to maximize your periods in the day and even have something like 7, this was not something considered by our group, 7 out of 8 periods taught, it would maximize what it is that we use. This year, our pilots are really part of our strategy, our OTG strategy. We're focused on School day programming, more during the day instead of after school, preparing students for high school through transitional activities, flexibility just like we were in the past, and that social emotional learning. So this year what you will see is Cascade did a jump start for their freshmen, had an orientation and brought kids in to see what high school would be like, and they put in place a 9th grade leadership seminar. They have continued their Success Time Credit Recovery course as a 7th period. For Everett High School, they have a SOAR credit recovery course. They're blocking algebra and geometry to get kids ahead, and there's a problem-based learning model for world history to engage students at a deeper level. Jackson has continued their problem-based learning model with algebra, coordinated science, and English. They're including social emotional lessons based on what they learned last year, and they have it during 7th period. Sequoia and the middle schools continue with their focus around advisories, really unpacking student by student concerns, issues, and follow-up to make sure kids are really receiving the services they need. So things that we will be looking at throughout the year will be how many kids are back on track, moving from red to yellow, yellow to green, and this is something we always monitor. The overall number of credits recovered, but also per student. The percent of students with improved attendance, because we want to see kids really attend. That greatly impacts their grades and overall credits. Looking at improved GPAs, not just in this year or one semester, but ongoing. And then the post-secondary plans that we have in Navient, and then to survey and actually gather information from students about their experiences through this process also. What you would see this year is we have geodesic domes going on over at Jackson High School. We have a wall of wow at Everett High School where you can see nearly 70 Post-its, that was like 2 weeks ago, with 90%, 100% completions in credit recovery. Kids are moving ahead, so celebrations. Our next steps are really to monitor and evaluate the progress of these pilots. They're really our strategies in OTG for the earlier grades. And then we're going to revise and refine those strategies for second semester and then really thinking about next year. We're going to keep exploring the school scheduling research because this is going to be a topic until we really know what it is that we're going to do. We continue to learn from districts and schools all over the state. We are monitoring closely the high school and beyond plans for the class of 2021, and then we will start that process with our current 8th graders and continue that each year as we move forward. We're going to integrate the 24 credit developments and make it part of OTG, and I think there's going to be many layers to that because that's how it gets unpacked in that work, is really looking at it closely overall. Big systems, but also that student by student focus. And then we want to ensure there's going to be high quality solutions, making sure we're ready to take action if things are to change. So I was able to share highlights of our background, our progress to date, an overview of our strategy implementation, our continued school scheduling research. I was able to report back to you the 24 credit graduation requirement research and strategy, how we've integrated into OTG, and share our next steps. With that, any questions?
Thank you very much. Directors, do you have questions?
Peter, I was not at that session. So of the schools that do have a 7-period day, how many of them are like Bellevue where it's an extended day for all students?
Yeah, that's a good distinction. There are quite a few.
Okay.
So of the districts that were highlighted, many of them have extended their school day. So they kind of, so to speak, killed 3 birds with 1 stone. So they might have addressed the extension of the school day to accommodate an additional period or some modification in their schedule. They might have looked at school start times in that larger conversation. So
Also student health, waking.
yeah,
Right.
other opportunities for enrichment. Yeah.
Okay, so then our program right now for the 3 high schools that really do have the extended day, that is an extended day. So the students are going to the typical 6 periods, 7:30 to 2, whatever the time is for their school, and then having another 40-minute class.
It's
or
not 40
thereabouts.
minutes,
Oh.
it's longer than that, but the
Oh.
reason is because on Fridays we have lift time.
Okay.
And so they've consolidated into 4 days, and we have an additional activity bus that takes place so they can get home.
Okay.
So it's longer than a regular period. It's
And
like an hour and 20 minutes.
how is the student participation in that extended period, especially if the kids have after-school sports, clubs, jobs, family commitments? What are the struggles that might be coming for those students?
The family commitments especially do show up in the attendance in after school or in the 7th period. And there has been a very intentional effort to ensure that students know and families know in advance what it will entail to be participating in the program that takes place basically after school. But attendance is an ongoing piece that we have to do follow-up. These are typically students that were impacted by attendance to begin with.
Okay.
So some of what you will see is that some of those credit recovery options have moved more during the school day. So even though they have a 7th period, there's also a period during the day. I didn't explain that in all, because there were many nuances to it during the school day as well. So they place kids in one or the other based on what students have shared with those that recruited, so success coordinators, administrators, and counselors.
And then it would be, if we were to extend our day to 7-period day, there is a very large dollar tag onto that, I'm presuming. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And many factors that go into that cost too.
And I'm just going to add on to that question. If we extended to a 7-day period, would that be required for all students or just students needing extra credits or support?
So with this, it's just for those who need it. So
The trial, but-
that's how we're working on it.
Okay.
But we're not in a place where we're proposing 7 periods for all kids. And that really could take lots of different forms. That's what we learned with Dr. Mike Reddick coming out, is even that could look many different ways. So that would require a lot of feedback on your part, the community, our teachers, of course, students, to see what that would really look like if that were even considered. It could look many ways. Longer day, it could look like our middle schools that have 7 periods already. There's variations here and there.
I have a question on Navient regarding just the variety of students that we have and the variety of post-secondary plans that might be in there. As we move toward trying to prepare kids for whatever career, meaning sort of some of those critical thinking skills and collaboration, some of those, is that reflected in Navient at all? I mean, I guess where I'm struggling is there are definitely going to be some students that need more exposure to career paths and the opportunities out there. And then there's going to be some kids that know exactly what they're doing. And I guess I fall back on my own personal experience that I ended up in an industry that didn't exist when I went to college. So, the wireless industry, they're springing, so for me, it was more not about, preparing, but just being open and ready to learn. And a lot of those things we talk about that we want our kids to be ready to do. How do you capture that? Or?
Well, you actually can. If you looked at the longer list, you would see our 21st century skills listed explicitly by students, so they are hearing that message.
Okay.
I want to be a problem solver. I could have pulled out ones that look like that. Really, because it's an open-ended question, they responded in a lot of different ways. And I think there's a point about I don't know that also means digging deeper, because there could clearly be I don't know, but it could mean that they're interested in certain things that aren't careers so much as ways that they want to move forward. That's why using the data and having it out is a new piece for us, so that we can group students, give them experiences around either field trips, career speakers, those kinds of things, or our course paths that we have planned as well, and making sure they're really addressing what kids are really talking about. There's a whole bunch of ways that we have actually started to use that data, and we did initially when we started with the seniors using that kind of survey data. It allowed us to do some steps, because even in Navient, in addition to talking about pathways to a career, it's got tabs that show you that. It talks about the skill set that you may have that may lead you to that, or things that you're interested in. And that's where those interest inventories, and there's a few different ways that happens in there, lead you into these ways that you can kind of look and explore. And they do tap into the, not just a career, but ways you like to work, or the way that you like to process things.
Yeah.
Different ways to measure that.
That would be interesting to better understand a little bit how that happens. Because I think about the I don't know, and it could just be, a really strong student that's going to college and they have no idea what they want to do.
Sure.
And it could be a student that's struggling to understand what the opportunities are afterwards or doesn't have the support to kind of help with that decision. So,
Yeah, it's a conversation and
Yeah.
opportunity there.
yeah. Great. Thank you. Director Lassane?
I'm very glad to hear about this credit recovery and how we can work it during the regular school year and the regular school day, even though it's after school, and I understand that. My question is, in trying to work with students and parents of the necessity of being present, what avenues have you tried to get parents to realize that we're supporting your kids? We really want them to be successful. We really need them there, because I know we're working with some of the kids that are, have difficulties meeting time restraints. And so my question is, how are we doing that? And what suggested better ways can we do to ensure that they're there at school?
We always like to work towards a win-win, and this is why it's OTG work. 24 credit is really OTG work, because in addition to the 7th period, we do have time during the school day. There's a period, so it really depends on whether one or the other is a better fit for students. And attendance is a huge factor in that. But when attendance is a huge factor, the things that we already have in place in terms of OTG start to play out. And those are home visits, calls, not robocalls. We're talking about the teacher calling, following up, saying, you're not here. Are you planning to come? We're waiting for you. You left off here. We can get you more support. We can follow up. There's a whole series of things, because it's not punitive. We want them to move ahead. We want to present it. That's why I love Jen Osmond's wall of wow, right? Because what you see in our pilot especially is that there's a lot of positive celebrations. And I think that keeps kids coming back. And you see that in variations, like the literal wow, and kids going, wow, I finished it. And they do, and it's very cool. And then engaging projects and teachers who sense how the group work. And you saw that in the geodesic domes where they're working. So I think the engagement piece, the teacher connection are things that hold true in almost everything else we do. And those work here too.
Those relationship building opportunities that we have there.
Yep.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you.
No questions? Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Next on our agenda this evening is section 11.0, information and discussion, and 11.01 is Everett Housing Authority Baker Heights redevelopment grant. And I believe Cynthia Jones is going to give us a brief presentation.
Correct, if you'll allow me just a moment to bring this up. Okay, so good evening, and thank you very much. I have the pleasure of introducing a project being developed by the Everett Housing Authority, which could have a tremendous positive impact on families experiencing homelessness, truly changing the lives of students and their parents. With me this evening is Ashley Lomers Johnson, the Executive Director of the Everett Housing Authority. I'm going to start with a brief overview of what we are experiencing in relation to student homelessness in the district, but then quickly turn over to Executive Director Lomers Johnson to describe the grant application Everett Housing Authority is developing. Following his presentation, there will be time for any public comments related to this project. Our McKinney-Vento students are one of our lowest performing subgroups, and we know that we can only address the root causes impeding their success with the help of community partners, such as the Everett Housing Authority. As you are very aware, I know you've seen this slide many times, we have experienced steady growth in our McKinney-Vento numbers, and we're continuing to see that this year. We currently have 750 active McKinney-Vento students, compared with 616 in mid-November last year. It seems counterintuitive that numbers of homeless would be rising in a period of low unemployment. We certainly continue to see domestic violence and substance abuse as factors leading to homelessness. But as you are also very aware, the cost of housing is rising. Most of our McKinney-Vento families are working. They just can't find housing they can afford. Housing is considered affordable when a family has to spend no more than 30% of their gross annual income on housing costs. That's rent or mortgage plus utilities. This slide shows the number of housing units available for people at different income levels in King and Snohomish County. The number of housing units available at that income level is in the green, and the unmet need is in the orange. AMI is the area median income. Half the total households in a given area make more, half make less. In the King Snohomish County region in 2015, the AMI was $89,600. So for people making less than 30% of that, in other words, less than $26,000, there were 7,000 housing units available that were considered affordable and unmet need of over 27,000 units. Even if you make 80% of AMI or $72,000, you'll have a hard time finding an affordable place. The Everett Housing Authority proposal would start to address this need in the Baker Heights area. There's certainly need for affordable housing in that area. This table shows the number of McKinney-Vento students in the Baker Heights area over the last 3 years. The Everett Housing Authority proposal would provide low-income housing prioritized for Everett Public Schools McKinney-Vento families. It would also include an ECAP preschool site on the property, allowing us to continue to expand our ECAP program. I'm very excited to turn the presentation over to Executive Director Lomers Johnson to describe their project. And over to you.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to introduce a couple of my colleagues, John Forsyth, who's our Director of Housing Management and Resident Services, and Steve Yaga, Director of Acquisitions. Steve will be mainly responsible for developing this project, and John will be responsible eventually for managing it. So key folks in this project for us. The Housing Authority serves around about 4,000 households mainly in Everett, some in outside of Everett in Snohomish County. And the vast majority, or not the vast majority, the majority of those households are either elderly or headed by somebody who's elderly or disabled. But a key part of our mission is to serve families with children because we want to make an impact on generational poverty. So this project is extremely important to us. Around the country, housing authorities, and there are over 3,000 of them, are serving fewer and fewer households with families, with children, a significantly fewer percentage than just 10 years. And we want to draw the line and want to make sure that we continue to do this. We have been in contact with the school district for the last 4 years or so about Baker Heights because Baker Heights is physically distressed and not viable. And there's a lot of kids who live there, and we've been kind of in contact with the school district about the project needing to either be sold or redeveloped. In this community, the lowest income community in Snohomish County, we try to apply for a federal grant that would provide us $35 million to redevelop the area, but unfortunately, one of the issues was that in this community, the crime rate in that community is less than the average in Everett, and so we're not distressed enough. So this is kind of a part of Plan B that we're going into. So what we are seeking to do with this project is to help create successful futures for homeless children and their families. Essentially what we'd like to do is coordinate and combine three elements into a single project to promote educational improvement. Obviously the school district and Everett Schools provides excellent public education, as well as relevant support services for McKinney-Vento students. We would provide on-site services for the students and their families, and of course, stable, affordable housing. We believe that by combining these three elements into one effort, that these three elements of education, support services, and affordable housing will create a synergistic effect exceeding the sum of the individual educational impacts of these individual elements. So we think that this will be a very successful project from the perspective of the families and the children that this serves. The Housing Authority has created partnerships with a variety of folks and community organizations, domestic violence services, Snohomish County. We have a national award-winning project there. We think that this project will similarly be a great project, not just for its national future potential awards, but just for the outcomes for the kids and for the community. For those of you who do not know particularly where Baker Heights, the community is, it's just north. It starts on 15th and it goes north. There are about 244 units, and we are going to dispose of this site. We don't know to whom yet, but there are a number of parties who are interested in this site. On the southeastern portion of the site, we are going to dedicate 3.68 acres of about 15 acres to this development. And the schools that this project will serve will include Hawthorne, Garfield, North Middle, and Everett High. The project, as currently conceived, will have 82 units. 16 of those units will be one-bedroom units, and the rest will all be family-sized units, units that will serve families with children. 42 bedroom units, 22 three-bedroom units, and 4 four-bedroom units. Including in addition to those common areas, as Cynthia indicated, we will also pursue the construction of an ECAP preschool facility on site. The site will not be completely developed with 80 units because we will build some more units in the future on this site too, but that's just still in the planning stages. So as indicated before, 62 units in the site will be set aside specifically for homeless families with children who are enrolled in Everett Public Schools KIT program. This project will depend on a number of funding sources, and as I reviewed the three of these sources, they're all in jeopardy currently. We will be applying for 9% low-income housing tax credits in January. That will provide about $210,000 per unit for the development of the project. With the current tax reform proposals on board, the whole 9% tax credit program is in jeopardy because of the lowering of the corporate tax rates, which will not make 9% tax credits a good investment or as lucrative of investment, but we are still optimistic that this will be available. At the state level, we will apply for housing trust funds, and as you probably know, the state did not pass a capital budget this year. We are also hopeful that that will happen. And then home funds through the city of Everett, and again, this is where the current administration proposed the elimination of home funds, but the Congress has not agreed, so we suspect that those funds will be available. And then finally, the Everett Housing Authority will make an equity contribution to this project, as well as make available project-based vouchers, which will make these units affordable to the lowest income households, even those with zero income. As far as timing of this project, demolition of the site of the 3.68 acres will be completed July 2018. Construction will begin in September of next year and will be completed in September 2020. Lease up and move in will start October 2020 and then completed December of 2020. In our partnership with the school district, the school will essentially determine KIT eligibility, provide services, and then refer households, homeless households with children enrolled in the school to the housing authority. We will place them on a waiting list, determine eligibility, and provide housing and on-site services at the site. The goals essentially for this project is overall to contribute to improved school attendance and performance. We are, in an age of need of increased efficiency. We want to make sure that we coordinate and streamline access to support services and benefits. Housing stability is an important outcome and goal for this population. Efficient use of and coordination of community resources, and then, of course, our ultimate goal is to reduce the likelihood of generational poverty for the families that we serve. So I am available for questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us this evening and walking us through the details of this project. It's very exciting to see, and certainly a huge benefit for our students. The Board of Directors is informed that this grant application is enhanced by the conduct of a public comment period by the Directors Board. Therefore, a separate public comment period on the proposed grant application is hereby opened. Public comments are invited, alternating the for and against comments as much as possible within the specific amount of time set aside for this. Board comments are now invited using, we wait. Are there any comments?
We have no one signed up for comments.
No comments, okay.
Are there opportunity for
And then
board?
at this time, board comments are now invited using the same time allocation as provided members of the public. Do directors choose to make some comments or questions?
I'd like some questions, if I may. Thank you very much for being here to present this. I think this will be a good opportunity for our kids that are here at the schools that really need a place to live. And I understand that one of the goals is to reduce the likelihood of generational poverty. These particular units in which the families will be occupying, are they going to be sold to them, or will they then have ownership of these, or is it?
No, this is a rental.
These are considered rental.
Housing, yeah.
One of the big concerns of reducing generational poverty is home ownership. That goes a long way with allowing families to know that they have a piece of the pie, so to speak. And I just wanted to know if this was part of that particular program, because it gives them an opportunity where it's not conventional practices for home ownership, but it gives them an opportunity for home ownership.
Yeah. One of the programs that we will implement as part of this project is referred to as the Family Self-Sufficiency Program. And through the program, as families increase their income and can contribute more to rent, the same amount of that increase due to employment is put in an escrow account for them. So families who've utilized this program in the past through the Housing Authority have gone on to become homeowners. We just, one of the families, or at least one of the families recently who left Baker Heights could not qualify for the Section 8 voucher that they're receiving as a relocation resource because the income is too high, and they are likely candidates for people becoming homeowners. And so while we do not have a formal home ownership program, we do encourage and provide service programs that allow people to accumulate savings and escrow accounts so that they can then utilize that for education or home ownership or other programs or other efforts.
May I ask another question? Yes, one of the other concerns I have is supportive services and benefits. One of the big disadvantages families have that are homeless because they may not have transportation. What additional services are we doing or allowing the city to partner with the construction and the project to provide transportation throughout that area so that they have transportation available to other opportunities like work, school after hours, libraries, grocery shopping, things which will allow them to be self-sufficient and independence.
So that neighborhood has a lot of services and will be receiving a lot of services, including transportation in the future. We do not have, at this point, don't have any formal plans to ensure coordination, but we will be working with the city and other partners. So it's a good concern, but it's not something that we're focused on yet.
Thank you.
I have one quick question, and this is a very basic question, I believe. Everett Housing Authority, is that a division of the city of Everett, or is that a federal program? And I'm sorry for my ignorance.
The Everett Housing Authority is an independent public agency. The board members are appointed or approved by the city council after nomination, but the board hires and fires the executive director, and I manage the agency. It's a state, it's a creation of the state, but it's funded mainly federally, and there's local control through a local board appointed by, but we're not an arm or a department of the city.
Thank you.
So my question is, how do we select of the families in need which get to occupy the homes?
How will they be selected? Well, one of the requirements will be that because we're giving families of Everett School District who are homeless, whose children are, who are homeless and who have kids enrolled in the school, they will have a preference. So it'll typically be based on time and a date of application. So we'll have opportunity, but the school will refer those to us, and that will establish the waiting list.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Okay, board comments are now, public hearing on this question is hereby closed. Thank you again for being here, and to the rest of the folks in the back of the room, and for the work that you do for our students. We really appreciate it. With that, I believe we have a fourth quarter update, financial update. It looks like Ruth is taking the stage.
Good evening. All right. The fourth quarter financial report is similar to previous quarterly reports, but has a few additional slides to summarize our year-end status. The State Form F-196 is also attached to your agenda item for reference. I'll provide a general fund summary and a bit more detail on revenues, expenditures, and fund balance, as well as touch on other funds. General fund's fund balance ended the year at about 10.1%, but would have been lower than 10% if not for an accounting change that I'll discuss a little later. As you can see, $1,370,000 was transferred in to general fund from capital projects for software expenditures, and there was $1 million transferred out to capital projects for the Memorial Stadium field improvements, as well as $64,000 transferred to transportation vehicle fund to purchase a bus. Student enrollment ended the year as we expected, about 31 FTE above budget. And total revenues and transfers ended the year higher than anticipated at $251.4 million, partially due to a GAAP requirement, generally accepted accounting principles requirement to include September local tax collections in the prior fiscal year. So 30 days past the end of the fiscal year get put back into the current fiscal year, and that's a change from prior years. Factors contributing to our higher revenues included local property tax collections being higher, including that accounting change, increased special education enrollment, bilingual enrollment, transportation route increases, food service lunch participation increase, as well as local revenues such as insurance recoveries, tuition, and fees. Total expenditures were $245.8 million, well within board appropriations, but lower than anticipated during the summer when we provided the projections. As you can see, August increased in expenditures by quite a bit, and that is mostly due to the K-5 literacy adoption, curriculum adoption that we did, as well as professional development in the summer, and one-time purchases such as maintenance equipment and Chromebook carts. Factors contributing to lower expenditures included special education costs close to budget, even though they had higher enrollment. So departments did a good job of containing their costs, even though their enrollment and other inputs were higher. Ending fund balance, again, $24.9 million, 10.1%. Would have been, without that accounting change, 9.8%, so about a 0.3% difference on that. Unassigned fund balance, 8.5%. And this is just a reminder that that the difference between restricted, committed, and assigned fund balance compared to unassigned fund balance. And the unassigned represents the liquidity that we have. The assignments, the restrictions and commitments, those are set aside for specific things such as grants, school carryover, the capital maintenance transfer monies, and inventory and prepaid items. And as you know, fund balance does fluctuate over time, and we can certainly see that in this graph of showing the trend over the last 10 years of fund balance. The top line is total fund balance, and then our unassigned fund balance, as well as the 5% and 2.5% goals for each of those. It has increased over the past couple of years in preparation for the levy cliff and other legislative action or inaction, whatever the case may be. So for Capital Projects Fund, we ended the year at about $63.2 million. That includes a $50 million bond sale that happened in December, and also a transfer in from general fund for those field improvements, and the transfer out to general fund for software expenditures. This is our revenue and transfer over time, over the course of the year. And these revenues don't include the December bond proceeds. I don't include those because it would be, so high in December that it wouldn't give you a good look at what the regular revenues, how they change over time. And that April spike is due to the capital levy proceeds, those higher proceeds that we received due to the 2016 capital levy. Expenditures were $22.4 million in the capital projects fund, and again you can see that spike in August, catching up on those accrued accounts payable items for bond and levy project implementations for North and Elementary 18, technology, portable purchases, those kinds of things. Capital projects year-end fund balance, again, $63.2 million, and this does include the bond proceeds, as you can see, that came in December. Debt service fund ended the year at $14.5 million. And as you can see there, it is trending up, and that is due to the 2016 bond. We need to have money available to make those payments as they come due. Associated student body ended the year at $1.4 million. That is about $260,000 less than where they started. And as you can see, a lot of that happened in August, and about $130,000 of that, I believe, is Jackson High School bringing their fund balance down. So they have been listening to you. And then Transportation Vehicle Fund balance, $144,000. This is a small fund. We purchased 3 buses in the early fall, one of which was funded through that transfer from general fund of $64,000. And that's all I have for you, unless you have questions.
Thank you. Directors, do you have questions regarding?
I have one question, and I feel like I'm channeling Director Wenta with this question. With our higher than expected fund balance, that is truly something we have been planning for because of this levy cliff, because of the state fully funding education, and I'm saying that with very exaggerated quotes because they are not doing that. And so there's my political speech. But I just want to confirm that with that higher than expected fund balance, there haven't been things that have not been done while we're trying to save for the future. Is that a fair statement?
No.
Okay.
There have been things that have not been done.
Because we're saving for the future.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
in fact, we've got a list on my desk right now of getting those things done.
Okay. Okay.
A lot of one-time purchases, some staffing items that are in the budget that we've been holding off on.
Just to make sure that
That
we have
you've
the funds.
approved already,
Yeah.
some that are over and above that. Exactly. We've got we've got pent-up demand, and we've been through those lists with you. We prioritized them with you, and I'll be touching base with you as I get ready to release.
Okay. So we've got a reasonable amount of savings, but also some spending that
We've
needs to be
we've got a
done.
level of savings that is higher than we wanted because we've been very, very careful, and we got to bring it down a bit, but we don't want to bring it down too far because when a bond passes, we go through that rating process again, and we want to maintain or possibly increase the rating. Not likely, but it's possible. And then get out to the marketplace at that lower rate. So we don't want to bring things down too fast. And we've been very, very upfront with all of our bargaining units and telling them why we were saving. Levy cliff, bond process, sale of bonds. We got another set of bonds to sell for the 2016 bond after the 2018 bond passes. we're going to have to get to the marketplace and sell those because we got to get those projects moving as quickly as possible. So that rating and reserve management balance is very, very, very delicate. And we want to make sure that everybody knows exactly why we're doing what we're doing and the kinds of things that we're spending on that people have been requesting funds for. Instructional materials, more dump trucks, things that are necessary to maintain the properties. We've been waiting on some of the grounds work that needs to be done that you've spoken about with me on a number of occasions, not happily, but it's those things that we really do need to get done fairly quickly. Does that help?
Yes, thank you, thank you, and thank you.
And what is our goal after we move through some of these expenditures now that we have a higher fund balance?
So if we don't take into account the 0.2, 0.3 that took us over 10, and we think we're in the upper 9-point range, getting us down under 8 is probably a good idea in terms of closing out this year.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Lassine or
That
Andrew?
was my question, She beat me to the punch.
I'm getting all my questions answered by someone else. So.
Director Anders, do you have any questions regarding?
I do have a question, just because I'm not current on gap changes. Can you just talk a little bit about that accounting change that resulted in us having to bring the tax collections into this year?
It's something that had been on the books for a while, but we were treating it like other districts that aren't on gap. We were being consistent with other districts, and that became a small issue in the audit last year. And so because we do the CAFR and we have to prescribe to gap, we decided to go ahead and make that change. It's a one-time change. And every year now that those September tax collections will move back. Yeah. So we actually are different than other school districts around the state that don't do gap statements.
So
it's 30 days past the year end.
So next year we should actually be lower in our taxes by that amount, tax collections, right? Because are you essentially including 3 tax collections in this year, and next year there will just be 1 because of the switch?
This year, this past year, there were 13 because we
13,
had
okay.
13.
Right.
And then next year there will again be 12, October through September. So it's just this 1 year where there's that extra payment to catch up on the rule.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I
that
see.
makes sense.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
They collect tax all year, even though.
Yeah, I was thinking it was the twice a year thing, but yeah. Never mind.
That's the big collections are twice a year.
Big collections are twice a year, but we do get funds every month.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. And at this point, we are going to take a 15-minute break, which brings us back just a minute shy of 6:25. Or 2 minutes shy. Whatever, Debbie.
Mike, which two schools are we doing which schools are we doing those small upgrades, those safety upgrades to? Which schools are we doing, elementaries, are we doing those little safety upgrades at the entries?
That we've already done?
Yeah.
One is Silver Firs Elementary on
Hawthorne.
And Hawthorne, those two. So the gates at Silver Firs and the entry intercom stuff's at Hawthorne?
Yeah, the entry, the access control system is at both.
Yeah, okay. No, it's okay. It's just, we're just doing, yeah, we stopped that.
Okay. We're back on.
We're not stopping.
Stopped it.
What?
Stopped it.
Stopped what?
Stopped that alternative. We're going back to the other alternative. Expensive one.
So that it doesn't look like a prison?
Okay, we're going to move forward here. We are now on section, 12.0 unfinished business. We have Mr. Moore here to walk us through the approval of Resolution 1163, Replacement Educational Programs and Operations Levy.
And as Mr. Moore begins this work, I want to remind you all that we have structured item 12.1, 12.2, and 13.1 as you had requested we do. Each of these has a resolution that's timed for February and a resolution that's timed for April. You may make the decisions on 12.1 and 12.2 independently. Once you make that decision, then we'll need to adjust accordingly, potentially, item 13.1. Just to say, you may select both on February, both on April, or you may split. If you split, we're going to have to alter, we're going to have to do a little work on 13.1 because there, as I recall, two versions in there, one for each of those dates. So if you got both on one or both on the other, we're good. If you split, then we're going to have to do a little tweaking, which is fine. And you can do them, and then we've ordered them so that you can do them in sequence. When you move the recommendation, you need to specify, whoever makes the motion, you need to specify which month you want that motion applied to. Does that make sense? Because we didn't put the month in the recommendation. We didn't make that assumption. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's my set for this so that we're all clear about the sequencing. I've been over it with the board president. I want to go over it again with everybody so that we're clear, and anybody listening and watching is clear about how we've set this up because you haven't made that decision to this point. Mr. Moore.
Okay. Thank you very much. And
I only took 2 minutes of your time.
That's okay. This is a brief presentation because we've done a lot of prior work, and the role of this presentation is just to document where we are today. I'll go through it fairly quickly, and I do appreciate the board at the last meeting contemplating which levy methodology we would use to calculate our levy. And so that was a very important moment, and I believe that we've provided you sufficient information between then and now for you to support your decision. So for our public who is watching, I would refer them to our last meeting. But again, this one is a streamlined version of what we discussed last week. We talked about the legislation, and we talked about how the legislature portrayed that their solution to the levy formula, everybody was a winner. We demonstrated last week and in this presentation that they still have some work to do on the formula, and that we're counting on that legislative correction to prevent what would be, in essence, another levy cliff for Everett and not all districts. So moving forward, I think we have a really solid approach. I want to remind our public that when you as a board approve a resolution and we put it on the ballot, it's the maximum allowable appropriation that you have approved and our public's approved. The state can be lower than that. And when the state's lower than that, we roll it back. So the state is the ultimate trump card on how much we actually collect. So with that, we've talked about the timing.
Please refrain from using the term trump card.
Okay. Okay, I know you don't like poker. So,
thank you, Mr. Moore. Keep going, please.
Okay. Couldn't help it. She's my neighbor.
Just keep going, please.
Yes. All right. All right. So this, of course, these deadlines are based upon the assumption if you pick the February date. If you pick an April date, then obviously this can wait. But right now, this is our timeline moving forward based upon our assumptions.
I think we're going to pause just a moment to bring Director Wenta on board.
Okay.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I was going to put myself on mute until appropriate.
Well, you're welcome. We're in the middle of the first agenda item, which is the resolution for the levy, and Mr. Moore is presenting.
Okay.
Everyone can hear you.
Thank you. Speak wisely.
All right, so we talked about the ultimate legislative outcome and how that would put us in a deficit position, and therefore we are following the common belief that the legislature is aware of and will make some action, to remedy the current Senate Bill 2242. Okay. As we move forward. Finally, we talked about the logic behind a structure as proposed in Resolution 1163, where we begin to step up the per pupil allocation beginning for the first 2 years at $2,200 per student, the third year at $2,350, and the fourth year at $2,500. And what that does is offset the impact to Everett as a result of the state lowering our salary allocation by 2% a year over time. So we're accounting for the regionalization factor. We want to point out one of our most important commitments to our community, and that is an overall stable tax rate commitment. And that commitment that historically had been made in prior years was jumbled a little bit during the Great Recession. But we reformulated that back with our 2016 levy and bond, and we've made a stable rate commitment of 586. And as you can see, our local tax rate is going to decline over time. And under this proposal, the total of all existing debt, our current and future capital levies, our proposed and future capital bonds are stabilizing at a rate of 489 out for at least 30 years. And the reason we do so is to overtly offset the impact of the state estimated increase in 2019 of 97 cents. So I think one of the most important things for our publics to know is that even though the state has bumped up their rate through what has been called a levy swap, we've continued to commit to that stable tax rate that we reestablished back in 2016. So this is sort of the colored structure, and we're being very overt with our public that the state doubled up in 2018. So as you can see, current law and our current level of funding locally is still in place, and the state added that bump in that year. So following that, we have stabilized back to what we can do within our control. And that's to fund all of those different taxing elements and honor that rate of 489. So if, I'm sorry, the other slide is that when you look at it in comparison to what our 2018 rate is, it kind of verifies that just the levy itself with all those other components, we're going to go from 261 down to a rate that hovers around 209. And as that increases from 2,200 to 2,500, it goes back up to $2.22. You can also see down on the bottom half of this table what our rate would have been under the former 28% and under even after the post-levy cliff if we would have gone back to the 24%. So definitely there's a lower local tax burden from the district, and it takes into account the state increase over time. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay. At this time, directors, do you have any questions for Mr. Moore?
I just have a question. I'm sorry for, so this is, excuse me, by the state, this is, you know, their enhancement levy, that we don't really have to call it that now, or whatever the word is, but we don't have to call it that right now, because we are still doing educational programs and operations levy. When this is put on the ballot, or we talk about it, are there specific things that this pays for besides salary that, I mean, that we can really call out, or that you can speak to, that are the specific things that this pays for besides just making us whole?
It is, in essence, it's paying for the legislative change in calling it enrichment is just a political rephrasing of what was already in place, and that's the constitutional use of local funding, and that it shall not be spent on basic education. And that particular over-reliance on local districts is why they increased the state tax and lowered the local ability to collect. And so we're still in that same dynamic. What we don't have is their definition of basic education. So what we're doing is we're looking at how do we balance the programs we've provided in the past, rely more on state funding and less on local levies, and at a later time, you can expect it to cover the same things that it always has. It's going to cover athletics, it's going to cover state shortfalls in transportation, it's going to cover extended days, summer school, all those programs that enrichment levies were intended to do. Now, to the extent that they do not increase salaries for us, or they do not fully fund special education, we're obligated to provide special education to our students. And that's why we're trying to urge to them, you believe you fully funded basic education, but we still need to spend it on special education. We still need to spend it on transportation to the extent the state isn't funding it. So what we might think of as different is it's still going to be spent on the same elements. It's just the proportion's different. It should be less, and we're trying to urge them to, as the Supreme Court did, invest another $1 billion because you haven't quite got there. Does that help?
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, at this time, I'd like the board to give consideration to the two dates before us. We have a February and an April special election that we've been considering. I'd like to hear input.
Director Mason, my input would be that this is something that we have relied on, that the state has not funded. We've relied on it in order to support the needs of special ed. We've relied on it to support the needs of what we consider a lot of basic education. And without it, teacher salaries would not be paid for. It would create a big burden on our students here. My suggestion is to go forward with this in the month of April. No, in the month of February. I take that back. I'm glad I got those looks. In the month of February and not April, because this is something we truly have believed that.
And I think too that the standard for the M&O levy, as they used to be called, is February. And because of the actions the district would need to take, if we were to wait until April 24th for a vote, just puts us in a precarious position. So I too agree, keeping with standard for February for the levy.
Director Wenta, do you have any comments?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Comments? Question? I guess comments.
I think after talking to other board members at the legislative conference this past weekend, it became evident that there's just a tremendous amount of uncertainty and just upheaval in the whole area of levies and bonds. But regardless, February seems like the time to put this on the ballot, and there's no question in my mind of the need. It is a replacement levy, and I'm happy that we're considering the state property tax increase in coming up with the amounts that we will ask the public for. So I think February timing makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. For those of you who aren't there, there was a conversation. It wasn't really a breakout session for districts considering a levy or a bond. It was mostly around levies this coming year, since there are so many parameters that have not been defined, and to be able to have directors converse with other directors across the state on how they're handling this. And not unlike us, there was a lot of uncertainty and questions and grappling with the best way to move forward, since they've removed, or the parameters haven't been well established after the last legislative session. So we are not alone in this. We have had the opportunity to process and have many conversations amongst us, many presentations. So with that, I would like to call for a vote on Resolution 1163. Is there a motion?
I move that Resolution 1163 be run in February. Is that what I needed to specify?
I would second that motion to run the levy in the month of February.
Okay.
Yeah, so your motion will appear that the Board of Directors adopts Resolution 1163, 2018, Replacement Educational Programs and Operations Levy for the month of February 2018.
Exactly.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 We got it.
All those opposed, no. The motion carries. And with that, we have Mr. Mike Gunn up for another resolution.
The same picture, that's not fair.
Well, good evening. First of all, I wanted to thank you all for the hard work that you're doing tonight, and that you do every night, that you come to these board meetings and other events on behalf of the students and community in Everett. Appreciate it very much. So as you well know, tonight we're asking you to consider approving a resolution for running a bond in 2018. The same choices are here as were in the previous resolution, to assuming that you do want to run a bond in 18, whether you would want to run it in February or April. So I will go through the presentation materials and then leave you with that same question at the end. And this presentation, I know that you've seen this or the content numerous times. Nevertheless, I'll go through it just to make sure that it's in the record, especially for the community's view, that you have seen this many times. And even though you may deliberate for a relatively short time tonight, I know that you've been thinking about this and working on it for a long time. So, so an overview of this presentation, once again, will cover the growth and the need for a new high school, some advice or themes from community and staff engagement activities, a list of the projects that from the last meeting that you had, we have brought forward a list of the proposed projects to go on a bond for 2018, and then talk with you just really briefly about the planning for new high school and STEM pathways at all of our high schools, and then present to you a brief summary of Resolution 1164. We have over time increased over the last decade about 1,100 students, and we expect that we will be growing by about 1,600 more students over the next 10 years. We have 115 portables, and that is going to grow up, increase pretty dramatically over the next, 10 years or so. This chart here shows the actual growth on a chart basis, district-wide, again, growing about 1,600 students over 10 years. This breaks it down by grade level: elementary at the top, middle school in the middle, high school at the bottom. And it's important to pay attention to the right-hand side of these graphs, where the dotted line, based on enrollment and population forecast in the long term, continue to show a growth for our student populations even beyond the 10 years of this chart. The growth is certainly in the south, primarily in the south and the southeastern portion of our district, which you can well see by the red rectangle there, which is the property that we purchased to build the new high school on, and that we're planning the construction of elementary number 18 on right now. The advice and the themes from community and staff engagement activities over the last 2 years: a strong support for a new high school. There are suggestions: try to limit the items on the bond to a few main ones and keep it simple. Focus on safety, culture, environment, and opportunities for students, 21st century skills, STEM, innovation, and facilities for emerging programs. Another bit of advice was to build interest and support across the district for a bond and a new high school. So in other words, provide projects in it that would generate support throughout the district. Build high quality and maintainable schools and infrastructure, and consider community use of our facilities. So we have taken the projects, and I'm leading up to the list, which the actual list of projects, which I think is on the next slide, and we've broken them down into 3 categories: growth, career pathways, and maintenance. And so you can tell from how this is structured here, we have a new high school on the bond proposal, and property for a future school, as well as 36 classrooms for smaller K-3 class sizes. In career pathways is primarily the STEM high school pathway programs that we're planning, 1 at each of our 4 comprehensive high schools that would be funded by this bond. And then under the maintenance category, continued renovation and upgrading of our building systems, HVAC for sure, as well as our electrical systems, and some other upgrades as well. This is the list of projects proposed for 2018 bond, $330.6 million. And you can read through the projects, but basically it conforms to what I was just talking about. New high school in the south end of the district, property for a future elementary number 20, 36 K-3 classrooms spread out throughout the district, modernizations of the Everett High School cafeteria building, the vocational building at Everett High School, and the science building at Cascade High School. And then you can see the projects that say with STEM right after that. There's another one with STEM all by itself, and that's the Jackson High School STEM Signature Program. So those 4 STEM projects will allow us to build and outfit or equip facilities at those high schools to build in a signature STEM program at each of those. And then, again, HVAC controls at 5 locations and 12 portable classrooms and electrical system upgrades district-wide. This is the site plan of the flagship project for this bond, which is the new high school as well as elementary number 18. We've talked you through the layout here quite a few times. This is the schedule for the new high school, showing about a little bit over 4 years duration to start to finish, and we've already started the process. We're meeting already with the architectural firm that's been selected, Dykeman Architects, on the visioning process for this project. This is a schedule showing the design and construction activities for this proposed list of bond projects, certainly focusing on the new comprehensive high school as the first project right out of the box. We would be doing the other projects as quickly as we can. And this is a preliminary schedule. We would certainly be modifying this as we go through time. This slide here shows once again the kind of the structure of the STEM pathway programs at each of our 4 high schools. At Cascade High School, the aerospace and advanced manufacturing would be, at this point, the identified STEM program option, to be located in the science building, which would be a renovation or modernization of the science building, and an addition at that building. The Jackson High School, we would be putting in there the information and communication technology signature program, and that would be built into the existing building. We would not be adding new space. We would go and remodel space inside the building to accommodate that program. At Everett High School, it would be medical and health careers, and this would be in a fully modernized vocational building modernization. And then finally, the new comprehensive high school number 4, energy and sustainability is the identified program, STEM program theme right now identified. There certainly might be some adjustments to these, but these are the ones that we've identified at this time. And that would be built in as part of the new construction of that project, of the new high school number 4. This slide here, we put in there here just because we understand there is going to be some conversation about whether to propose a bond for February election or the April election. So we wanted to give you some idea of what those timelines look like. The deadline for filing these resolutions with the county is December 15th for the February 13th election, and then February 23rd for the April 24th election. Ballots are mailed out about 19 days prior to Election Day, and certification comes a couple weeks later, as you can tell. So now we're basically down to the final slide before the question for you. This is an overview of resolution number 1164, capital bond proposal of $330.6 million. Debt service on major bond programs like this are primarily financed by property taxes over 15 to 20 years. We typically sell those bonds in 3 or 4 packages of 50 to 75 million apiece, roughly. And then we have potential state financing assistance for these modernization projects totaling about $9.5 million. As you well know, 60% supermajority is required for voter approval, and that is on top of a validation requirement of 40% voter turnout of the number of votes cast in the last general election. So that is a summary of the resolution. So now we're down to it. We're requesting that you consider approving resolution number 1164 for a capital bond proposal for placement on either the February 13th or the April 24th, 2018 special election ballot.
Thank you. I would like to thank you and your team for all the work you've done in bringing this to us. I know you're a bit busy with 2016 bond projects and making sure those move along, and to be able to provide the detail and the information to us to help us assemble what I believe is a very equitable bond package, and highlights the most urgent needs while also being mindful of taxpayer dollars. So thank you all, for those sitting in the back.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to open it up for questions or comments to the directors or student representative.
I do have a question, if I may. You mentioned on your previous slide that we can expect $9.5 million in state assistance funding. How would that come to us throughout the projects that you've identified, the time period? Can that be used on any of the items within the bond that we're proposing, or would it have to be used on structures and facilities that are not within that bond package?
So you've asked 2 or 3 questions. Let me try them in order. First question, when would they come in? This money would come in during the latter stages of the design, of the actual construction of the projects that we received the money on. I think this $9.5 million is divided up into 4 projects on our bond list. So they would be coming in over time, not all at once, over about a 3 to 4 year period, probably. So that's the first.
Would the caveat just be if there was a state capital budget?
Yes, it requires the state legislature approve a capital budget, and the governor approves that, and that they have the money to.
Otherwise, there is no money.
Yeah, so I think that's really important when we've talked with legislators, and you all have gone down to Olympia and argued for, capital funding. We often hear legislators say, "Oh, we always provide you the state construction assistance program funds, SCAP funds, which come to us based on the timing that Mike described, with when those eligible projects generate them versus receive them, generate them. But the capital budget has to be passed, and they have to put enough in it to cover all the projects that occur during that time frame. So next time a legislator tells you, "Oh, we always give it to you," you know that that's not so.
That's not so.
There are a number of districts and colleges and universities who are in limbo with regard to their projects. So it's an important point right now.
And that's right. Thank you very much. And the other question that you asked was, which projects can these monies be spent on? The way the resolution is written is that we can use this money to complete the projects that are listed in the bond, as well as other projects if we end up not needing this money to complete the projects that are listed already. In other words, we do have some flexibility.
But it is always dependent on the state passing their capital budget.
Always, always.
And just a quick, whipped out my calculator on my phone here, and it's less than 3% of our total bond package. So when we talk about the state assisting with construction costs, it's not much.
And that's pretty important when projects are escalating at 9% a year, 9 to 12% a year. And our new projects, the new space doesn't qualify.
Right.
Yeah.
Dramatic.
Mike, I think I heard you say when you were talking about the Cascade High School Science Building modernization that there would also be an addition?
Yes.
Oh.
We, as part of this project, to provide the space needed for the STEM signature program, I think it's advanced manufacturing, aerospace and advanced manufacturing. We would be building about 4,000 square feet of additional space adjacent to the science building, and it would basically replace the space that we would be losing when we demolish the auto shop building at the Cascade High School. In other words, that is a building that is in need of significant need of modernization. It's also not in compliance with current ADA access codes. So we've known that for many years that we've had to do something there. So this is the something, is that we're going to be building a STEM signature program addition to the science building at Cascade to replace the loss of the auto shop building at Cascade High School, at the same time that we're doing a full modernization of the entire science building at Cascade High School.
Okay. I guess so.
Just along that, just for clarification, when you modernize the science building at Cascade, is it science class space that gets modernized and then you're adding the signature program in addition to that? Or is it sort of all blended?
We're going to be thinking about it this way. The existing building is composed of an older building and a newer building. We're going to be doing a full modernization to that entire existing building. we're doing more to the older part of it because it needs more. But basically, we'll bring it all up to a current level of relatively new condition. In addition to that, we'll be building an additional 4,000 feet with the STEM signature program space. I think it's basically, and we could get Dana up here to talk about that if you'd like.
But it's sort of like two projects in one, a little bit.
Yes.
You have that- Okay.
Full modernization of the existing building
Yeah.
plus
Okay.
about 4,000 new square feet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have two.
I'm not sure, I interrupted Director Andrews, and I'm not sure she was finished.
I had another question. I guess sort of asking for clarification on the vocational building at Everett High, just because I'm not that familiar with it. Is that a remodel of the entire building or just the portion that would have the STEM program in it?
The existing, the entire building.
Okay.
And the exterior of the building as well.
Great.
Which would entirely be devoted to the STEM program.
Oh, the entire
That's our
building.
The entire building.
The entire
We have a
building.
separate science building. Separate
Expect
science
that
building.
program to draw
Yes,
regionally.
right, that's right. Yeah. Pardon?
We expect it to draw regionally.
The square footage of that building? I mean, that's not a fair question off the top of your head, sorry. It's
Not
large.
a fair question.
Yeah.
They're going to get back to you on that
Take you
one.
back into the details of that particular project. We went over it a while back, but we
Yeah.
can take you
It's a
back.
good sized building, I do know
it
that,
is.
yeah, okay.
Would it, at the Cascade site, would that modernization include upgrades to the electrical system within the building? And would it also include that piece of strip that's adjacent to the main Evergreen Street there that seems to be, would include the purchase of that piece of property that seems to be kind of,
Overrun.
yes, sir, that's the word.
The project funds that identified in the bond right now, we have not included money to acquire new property at that location. I would love to be able to buy property there, but it does include the electrical system upgrades to the building as well as upgrades to the site in that
Flow.
area as well.
Yeah,
Because
so
we're going to be
the
adding.
flow between the buildings is a little bit better than what it is now.
Yeah, we would be basically rebuilding all of the exterior around the building.
Okay.
Because we're going to have to relocate that road, the access road around the school.
Right.
Because we're going to be building 4,000 square feet more building on that, probably I think it's the northwest corner of that building.
And the building would be totally ADA compliant at that point?
Should be, yes.
What do you mean by should be?
We haven't designed it yet, but the intention whenever we do a full modernization is that all the spaces in the building would be ADA compliant when we're done.
Does the code require that?
I believe it does, yes. Nevertheless, the code does on occasion allow us to achieve ADA compliance by program modification rather than physical removal of barriers. But I think in this case, we do plan to provide full physical ADA access to all
Does this also
spaces.
include removal of the old auto shop?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, he mentioned that.
Yeah.
Director Mitchell, do you have any questions or comments?
I just have I guess it's just a comment, because last time we were really toying with portables versus the permanent classrooms. So when I was at the Gateway parent meeting, a lot of the parents there were former Penny Creek parents, and some of them have been around a long time, like I have, to know that when Penny Creek was built, an addition was immediately put on, and so that because of Shelley now Bowden, how you could have a big school with still a small school feel with the construction of it. And so I did present to them the fact that we were contemplating permanent structures at a couple of elementary schools, and very much a good feeling from about 16 to 18 parents about how permanent buildings at elementary schools really do help versus portables. And I know we just struggled with that last time. I know it's just a group of 16 to 20. But it was just sort of confirmation that there is parents do appreciate the permanent buildings versus portables.
Yeah, I think especially at the elementary level. Okay, at this time, I'd also like comments from directors regarding dates. I know this is something that we have discussed at great length, and both options provide opportunity and challenges, and I'd like to hear sort of your thinking around February versus April.
I think to be fiscally responsible, because it does cost every time we run a ballot, I believe that if we're running the levy, I was trying to think of the whole word, I couldn't think of the whole name of it now, in February, it does make sense to run the bond in February so that we can educate the community of both votes that we're asking for at the same time.
Put on anymore?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
He had dinner at 7.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to chime in. We have been talking about a new high school and running a new high school since before 2014 bond, which did not succeed, was not successful. We went back to the public and we said, let us modify that bond package to make it more reasonable and acceptable for our community. Our community still knew we needed a high school, and we've been struggling with this overcrowding situation for quite some time now. I mean, it just didn't happen overnight where Jackson is where it's at right now and the number of students. And every parent conversation I've gone to had said, you've known this for a long time, do something, act. Now is the time to act. My biggest concern is that if we delay, we're only going to increase the number of portables on the campus at Jackson, where we can't put them on portables on the parking lot because the kids have to come to school. I guess the tennis courts and the play field is another potential place where we can do that. We should not place that school in that predicament, especially when we've been to the parent breakfasts and they've liked our proposal. They're very adamant about the STEM programs look really enlightening for their students, especially the elementary school and the middle school students that we've seen. They will be able to reap those benefits. My focus is, we've known, let's act. Let's do what we can to get it done and get it done at the same time so that we don't have to share an expense with another election in another month. But let's really work to get it done. And let's support our parents so they don't come back and say, you've known, how come you didn't act? So my suggestion is to go with February.
My 2 cents is, even though last meeting I thought it was a good idea to delay the vote or the bond for a year, to which Mr. Gunn had an obvious response. But I don't blame you at all, after having time to think about it. And I actually spent some time going back over all the different meetings we've had regarding bond planning, and we have done our homework on this. I mean, it's clear. I know my hesitation was that the February did not give us enough time to get the message out to the voters. However, rethinking it and talking to other board members, again, at the conference and all, I think February does present an opportunity to combine the levy and bond. We're going to be contacting voters. I think to separate the campaign would not make any sense to do February, April. And I think to delay to next year is not a good choice because of what you just said, is the need for a high school is very obvious. The conversations I've had with people in the South End, especially middle schoolers, you're talking to those parents, and if they've got an 8th grader right now, they are suffering from the crowding, but that 8th grader, by the time the new high school is open, they will be out of our system. So we really can't delay another year. I think the time is now. There's not a lot of appetite for portables. And I think the other real opportunity here are the STEM programs, which have been really warmly received by parents in the North End as well. And the people in the North End have been very understanding of the crowding in the South End, are supportive of it, and also really, really like the fact that the bond also addresses needs at other schools. And not passing the bond before has just had really detrimental effects of just pushing our needs out and out and out. And we just can't continue to do that. So I think the time is now, and we just need to bite the bullet and go with February. And I'm very optimistic that we've made our case, the need is known, and we have a lot to offer the district. It's a very defendable, bond. I wish we could put more on it, but, we also are honoring the taxpayers in keeping the bond or the tax rate stable in this environment. So I've come around to voting or suggesting I think February is a good timing.
Well, I would you like to make a comment?
You can vote.
Or
can you vote?
I can
No.
vote.
Can you vote in an election? Not tonight.
Oh, in the
but
election, I
election.
meant.
The election.
Just barely no. A few days, yeah. But I would just say that from the conversations that I've had with students and families, particularly in the South End, the need is very clear to everyone down there, and I think that they are already quite educated on the need and the STEM pathways. A lot of people are already aware of the planning for that, and so I think that February should, instead of splitting the ballot or even waiting another year, I think February would be the best option as well.
Thank you for your input. I think similar to what Director Andrews said, there's been a lot of planning done, and we really have taken the time to look at these projects and understand where the needs are and come up with something that serves the whole district. I think that some of the reservation on behalf of directors has been around the current political climate, and in the sort of our corridor, as it were, some of the tax increases that we're seeing out there, and just concerned for voter support in bringing forth the measure. The thing is if you wait a year, you don't know that it's going to be any better. So I agree. Once deciding on February for the levy, it certainly does not make sense to run another measure in April, in my mind, given the cost and voter fatigue, and it's better to run it together and keep it tight. So with that said, any other questions or comments? Okay, at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve Resolution 1164, Unlimited Tax General Obligation Bonds, on the February 13th ballot.
So moved.
There a second?
Second?
It has been moved by Director Lassane and seconded by Director Mitchell to approve Resolution 1164, Unlimited Tax General Obligation Bonds, on the February 13th ballot. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The motion carries. That brings us to Section 13.0, new business. And with this, approval of Resolution 1165 to support passage of replacement levy for educational programs and operations and capital bond propositions for the February 13th election. And, oh, I need to do a hearing. I'm sorry. Gonna make a motion.
Well, actually, I think Mr. Gunn has a brief presentation for you.
Oh.
And
Sorry.
then you can walk through the sequence.
I do, and I thought I would use the same slide since we'll be talking about the same thing. The purpose of this agenda item is to request your consideration and approval of Resolution 1165. And this is to express your support for passage of a proposition for a replacement levy for educational programs and operations, as well as the passage of a proposition for a capital bond on the February 13th, I'm proud to say, 2017 special election ballot. By passing this resolution, the board is stating that it believes these propositions are necessary for a variety of reasons. For the proposition number one, the levy, the board would be saying that it's necessary to provide continued funding for the district's educational programs and operations activities. And for proposition two, the bond, the board would be saying that is necessary to accommodate increases in student enrollment and to upgrade aging facilities, and that you believe that capital improvements and betterments of its facilities are in the best interest of the residents and the students of the district. So the board would also be declaring its support for passage of these resolutions at the February special election. As Dr. Cohn mentioned earlier in the meeting, as per RCW 42.17A.555, as part of the consideration of this resolution, prior to taking any action, the board is required to first conduct a public hearing on the proposed action. And this hearing must provide members of the public and members of the board an approximately equal opportunity for expression of an opposing view on the proposed action. So at this time, I would ask that you proceed with your consideration of this resolution and a public hearing, and that you do so prior to voting on the proposal.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to request a motion to approve Resolution 1165, sorry, one line off, gosh, to support passage of replacement levy for educational programs and operations and capital bond propositions.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Director Mitchell and seconded by Director Andrews and I actually didn't say February the first time, to approve, and I'm going to say it again, to approve Resolution 1165 to support passage of replacement levy for educational programs and operations and capital bond propositions on the February 13th ballot. All those in favor say aye.
No.
Hearing.
You gotta go through that.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
So you've heard Mike's presentation. You now have the motion before you.
Now we
Yes.
open.
A public hearing on the proposed resolution is hereby opened. Are there any public comments regarding the resolution?
We
Okay.
did have a separate sign-up sheet. No one has signed up.
Okay. Board comments are now invited using the same allocation as provided members of the public. Would any directors like to make a comment?
I think I would just like to just talk a little bit about the presentation we saw at the conference by Jamie Vollmer. Is that his name? Yeah.
Yes.
And his whole topic was schools can't do it alone, and talked about the extra burdens that have been put on public schools over the years. But also, just really, really solidified the fact that strong schools build strong communities. And I'm just really proud and honored to support a levy and bond in our community because it is the best thing for our community.
I concur exactly. Redundant.
I would concur as well. This is the best thing for our community. This is the best thing for our students to be able to be given legs up and hands up and support they need so that when they cross that finish line, called graduation. They're not finished learning. They're going on and they're ready for whatever happens, college, career, or life. And I think we need to give them every opportunity to succeed. If not now, when? If not, we've got to do that for our kids.
Okay, thank you. A public hearing on this question is hereby closed. We will now proceed to the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The motion to approve Resolution 1165 carries.
Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you for the presentations. And with that, we move to section 14.0, upcoming agenda items. Dr. Cohn, what are our upcoming agenda items?
Item 14.1 is your special meeting on November 28. I have attached to this item a draft agenda for a board work session based on the commentary during several of our discussions about the use of this time. I think before we even open that draft that Mike has prepared regarding this work session on community engagement, I would ask whether you still want to have this meeting. Maybe you'd like to open it and see what we think we'll be doing. Yeah, if you click on the attachment, you may want to refresh.
One thing that Jamie Vollmer also said, and it's something that I think we have talked about, it's how to reach out to our community when we have a bond, but also how to reach out to them when we need to say thank you, and how to keep that line of communication going. So I think that if something is prepared that could answer and help us as we go out for this levy and bond and want to continue dialogue with these, like the communication, the breakfasts we're having right now, which are open, how are things going? What are the meetings that we need to have? If that meeting is ready, if that's what this meeting is, I would like it. If it's not, then.
Well, as I look at the agenda here, as it's laid out, to me, it's a lot of review of things that we've talked about and covered. So we have the summer workshop materials, communication strategies, which we went over in depth at our summer workshop. Board breakfasts, we've sort of been recapping those along the way, and I don't think we're really at a point for a summary on those because we're sort of mid-breakfast. And then community engagement since April, that's all passed. I think the thing that I'm most interested in is given what we've decided tonight, what are we doing between now and February 13th? And I'm not sure that that the timing of this meeting, there's an opportunity to really pull together a larger study work session. I will throw that out there for comment.
I agree with what you identify as the need.
Yeah.
So would you like to take this meeting off your calendar?
So could I make a proposal or recommendation? What if we remove this meeting because it appears that this information is less relevant. It's more about leading up to our decision tonight. And I don't think we're prepared to talk about what communications and engagement looks like in its entirety until February. Could we perhaps have a section of our Friday report just along the way, get brief updates on what's happening within the district on whether that's from the communications department or a joint communications facility report in terms of specific activities that are being done to support the bond and levy?
Sure.
Or when necessary, maybe not every Friday report, but when there are things that we, would be helpful for us to understand.
Sure. You bet.
It may be short choose to take this and modify this, not for what we've already done, but what, just as you mentioned, where we're going in the future. Maybe what we used to do at our teams. But if we could do something in a Friday report, that would be great. But I don't want it to be eliminated just because, you know, it doesn't fit our needs. There's still potential to be able to fill it with those things looking forward. If we have time, I don't want people to go over Thanksgiving holiday and do that and prepare something for us. But the question is, it has been on the schedule, can we tweak it to make it more relevant?
I don't think there's the time to do that. I really don't, in my understanding. Unless, I don't know.
Well, I think what we'd end up doing is working through the plan that's in place, and which was kind of what that 45 minutes was about, and maybe make that 60 of the 90 or 75 of the 90, so that you can walk through what specifically is planned day by day between now and as much of the end of the year as you'd like.
I guess my question is, I mean, technically, you know, the district's been planning on a February election, and I know that we've discussed April, given some timing and some constraints and some political activities going on and decisions being made beyond our control. But really, the plan actually should be already developed and in place, and this would be the update of what the district was doing to support our efforts going forward, knowing that February was the likely date. My only concern is that we have some limitations on personnel and staff right now that has probably impacted the ability to pull things together. But I mean, technically, it should already be done, right?
Oh, yeah. So you could take number 3 and number 4 out. Number 2, or compress number 4 into number 1, and then not worry about number 3, and essentially number 2 and what would be number 5 if it were numbered would be the bulk of the meeting. Number 2 is forward-looking.
Okay.
These are topics, they aren't necessarily in order. Mike and Joyce were kind enough to pull this together so that we could show you topics. So we could eliminate 3. 4 sort of gets blended into and compressed with 1, if you will, so that we remind ourselves what we've done, because we've done a lot. You don't see it, you don't remember it.
Not a whole lot of review.
No, right. I think they all have the message, and then spend about an hour on what the day-by-day work is, just to see whether you want to adjust it and make sure that you're all on board with the various pieces. And we'll have web pages up by then, and we can spend some time looking at that and the materials. The communications firm is working on the materials, so that we could do it that way.
Be advantageous for us.
Yeah.
And okay, so that makes more sense to me. I think that's a good idea. And really, it's just the time that you need to do this is the length of the meeting. We don't need to force it to 60 minutes or 90 minutes. If it's an hour, if it's an hour and 15, whatever that looks like, it would be nice just to get that quick update.
Right. So we basically have Monday and part of Tuesday to get ready. We'll put a short agenda up this week.
Okay.
Yeah, they know it's turnaround. I mean, most of this is together. It's a matter of how we structure it and spend your time on it. If you're wanting to spend time on, if nothing else, it's an opportunity for you to get together. Make sure that when we lay the calendars out, you all know what you're individually committing to, and you've got your calendars there, and we're making sure that we're going in the direction we're going together. Yes, ma'am.
Does it make any sense to try to push that back to December 5th and either come a little early for the meeting or stay after or something?
You mean make it part of the December meeting or before the December meeting? if you'd like to do it for an hour before the December meeting as a special.
I'm not sure what the December meeting looks like.
Well, the December meeting, we swear in Director Lassane. You do your board vote you organize yourselves, elect your officers for the coming year. We have a recognition for the School of Distinction. We have if you look at the next item, I don't know why I'm trying to remember all this. If you go to 14.2, you've got a class of 18 progress to graduation update, which is very, very good. And you've got some financial reports, and you'll have the Snohomish County Council members here presenting you a check, well, a faux check for $300,000, which was their capital grant for the
Field.
Yeah, for the replacement of the baseball field in Memorial Stadium.
So the financial stuff is all consent agenda?
All the September and October reports are consent. That's correct. So is the United Way agreement, if in fact it's ready. And I think it's not going to be there. Never mind. I guess we did a multi-year agreement with them. No, what's up, Mike? You're shaking your head. It's like I'm out at home plate. Or am I safe?
Sorry, they're offering the tax preparation services in their own facilities now.
Okay, so we're just taking this off the agenda. All right. Jeffrey's going to give you the legislative priorities, which is a bit of a discussion. And frankly, we're going to put it in rather than your discussion item, we're going to put it in your action items, because I think we're at the point where we know what the priorities are, and you don't need 2 meetings to figure it out, so that we can pivot off of that for communication to legislators in December and not wait till January. So that's what the meeting looks like. Would you want to load it in there?
Sounds like a potentially 3-hour meeting.
Yeah, I don't.
How long's the?
Well, the strategic progress monitoring item is probably
30.
Yeah. 30 minutes. We've taken all those stoplight slides out. You kind of liked it last time. Me, I kind of like those stoplight slides, but what the heck. So I think that shortens it a little bit, but it's loaded with very rich data. I'm guessing it'll take longer than 30 minutes, but I wouldn't. I think if you spend an hour, you've easily got a 3.5-hour meeting. That's my estimate, because we haven't timed this thing out. If you'd like to come early and do a study session or work session for an hour before, we certainly can do that.
I had it blocked out on my November 28th, and
I'm just worried about the timing of
for staff,
getting it prepared.
Well, we only have about an hour cabinet meeting, so they get a couple of hours bonus.
Because they'll have nothing to
on
do
Monday.
after being out for 4 days.
Yeah, I'm telling you. It's up to you. What would you like to do?
They've currently scheduled, and this has been on the calendar for a while.
The 28th?
Yeah.
Well,
I've been planning for it.
we've been working on this stuff for months, and yes, it's been on the calendar, and yes, our staffing hiccup right now, is.
Well, does that warrant moving it? Can we ask these people that are sitting in front of us, nodding, shaking, moving?
They're going to do what you want them to do. They'll do whichever one you want. I mean, you prefer the 5th? The two of you are doing the work, the bulk of the work. You prefer the 5th or 28th?
I like the idea of shortening it based on your decision tonight. I think many of us will be busy that night doing other work. So I like to shorten, and we do it on the 28th, and then we go off and do some other work that we all should be doing that evening. So that's my thought. I like the suggestion you had earlier.
Okay.
With the 1 hour, the changes you made?
Well, the 1 hour was before the 5th, but
Right, exactly.
you want to do it before the meeting on the 5th? You want to do the shorter one on the 28th?
I want to do the shorter one on the 28th so that we have the rest of the evening to do what we need to do.
Okay.
and I think that we could do.
Mike?
I'm fine with that. I think most of the meeting will be kind of looking forward anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, very brief review. We know the meetings we've been in.
That's what I was going to say. I think a quick review and a whole lot of discussion on our part. That it doesn't require much on their part maybe? For us to do it on the 28th for an hour, 4:30 to 5:30, and everybody's home for.
Fine. Is that good?
The whole evening, you can't make it, or? Or, can we move the start time to 5? Would that be helpful?
Sure. 5 o'clock?
Still gets us home for dinner?
Yeah.
Once, twice, 3 times, sold. Good, all right. So 4.1, special meeting, we're going to adjust it as we've described. We're going to start at 5 o'clock, not 4:30.
That's okay. Yeah. But that gives you more of a chance to, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You want to move it a little bit later, start?
I think that's fine. We'll get going, and
5
she can
o'clock it
come
is?
as soon as she
Okay.
can.
And then I've reviewed the meeting on the 5th, so I'm pretty much done.
Okay, and tonight, we have no executive or closed session.
Would you like to see a few pictures from Washington, D.C.?
Yes.
Can you flip over to my machine? So this is sort of a little, I pulled together a few slides for you really quickly, sort of as a little bit of maybe a combination of Veterans Day and Thanksgiving. I know that several of you are aware that my sister and I acted as guardians and took my dad and his twin brother back to Washington, D.C. for a Puget Sound honor flight. World War II vets, mostly, so they're about 90 to 100 in that group. Alaska Airlines provides a very special airplane, special crew, and tremendous number of vets come out for this activity. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to very, very quickly flip through. This is at SeaTac, and I got hundreds of pictures. I'm not giving you hundreds of pictures, but I want you to know the kind of turnout that active military provide for our veterans in the Puget Sound. So this is at SeaTac, and folks are getting on the airplane. The airplane's ready to leave. It's a special liveried airplane. Here's where it's arriving at Baltimore. There's big fire trucks, and they greet it with big water cannons. So this is an airplane full of essentially World War II vets. About the first stop after they get a night's sleep is the World War II Memorial, which is breathtaking if you haven't seen it. This is a very nice picture that one of the folks took of it. Here's the crew of veterans. Yep, this is the entire crew of the vets who are on that airplane. You can see how many of them.
That's all wheelchairs.
Are in wheelchairs. That's exactly true. And then you can see the honor guard that presented the colors for them, and there was a lot more ceremony and a lot more pictures, and it was a remarkable activity. We went from there to the, as I recall the days, we went from there to the Vietnam Memorial, which is striking. I'm sorry, the Korean War Memorial, which is just, they're all striking, but this is just striking. And there were a number of vets from these conflicts, and there were opportunities for folks to spend quiet time, and you can see the pair that my sister and I took there. They were actually among the most mobile and started pushing other people's wheelchairs, which made several of us very, very nervous. One of the next stops along the way was to Arlington National Cemetery, which is I've never seen before. So there's 2 buses of veterans, and we went for the changing of the guard, which is a very solemn ceremony. There's absolute silence, and if anybody makes any noise, they stop and tell you to be quiet. It's remarkable, and the whole inspection is real of the ceremonial weaponry and all of that sort of business. It's truly very carefully choreographed. The veterans were very attentive. You can see a couple of special ones there. Well, they're all special, but they were special to me. We had an opportunity to sneak over to the guards' quarters, and actually one of my former students was a sentinel and called ahead and had one of the staff sergeants come out and spend some time with us. He was a remarkable fellow, got on the buses and talked with the veterans, which the Honor Guard folks said had not happened before. So they had a wonderful time being able to ask the Sentinel, this particular Sentinel, questions. We went to we had been at the Lincoln Memorial, we spent time at the Vietnam Memorial, and then we went over to the FDR Memorial, which is absolutely remarkable. And I think probably we know what this is. This is a soup line, a soup kitchen line, which is part of the memorial. By the way, most of the pictures are the twins. And then we went to the Navy Memorial, and we went to the Air Force Memorial. There were a number of vets from all of the services. They had a wonderful banquet, and there were all kinds of hugs. That's my dad getting a hug. That's my uncle really getting a hug. And then we got on the airplane, and we went back, and there was a deal that they arranged called mail call. So family members write to them like they did when they were in the service. They deliver these things. This is a couple sitting, a pair sitting near us. This is mail call. They're reading their mail from family members, and kids across the country write. So you don't know who you're getting mail from. That's my uncle reading his mail, so it's all kinds of fun. You get back to the airport at SeaTac, and the Guardians are peeled off, and active military members meet the veterans, and they take them to a very, very large ceremony that lasts for actually a long time, considering they're very tired. It's a huge number of vets, and there's a group, I don't remember which high school they were from, literally dressed up like performers in the 40s. So this is just a couple of quick pictures, and really for me it combines the notion of honoring our vets, who, without whose service we wouldn't be here today, and just as another little opportunity to note the importance of the Thanksgiving weekend. Thank you all very,
Thank you
very
for
much.
sharing.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah, very fun. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, well, I guess with that, we are to section 17.0. That concludes the business scheduled to come before the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors this evening. This meeting is adjourned.